So thank you very much for your interest in government grants. What we're going to do first of all is just have a look at what this webinar is going to cover. We're going to look at ESS BIZGrants and talk about it and show you how it works and show you the type of report that ESS BIZGrants produces, and we'll then give you some suggestions as to how those reports might be able to be used. And we're going to look at a client profile so you can get an idea of how you would import your client data to enable the system to undertake its work to identify government grants that your client might be eligible for. And then we're going to have a look at the website, then we'll have a look at your investment. So our aim was to develop a quick and easy solution defining government grants for individual small medium enterprises. This came about a few years ago when I was having some discussions with David Smith, the Managing Director of Smith Inc. 2020, and we were talking about the problems that David had identified when he was undertaking due diligence reviews for one of the accounting consolidators. And part of that role was he was required to interview small business operators of the client firms that had expressed an interest in being involved in the consolidator. And when David talked to these small business operators, one of their areas of whinging, if you like, about accountants was that they were not being kept up to date with details about government grants. My consultancy business had had a fair bit to do with government grants in the previous 10 years, and I decided then that we would add to the material which was already in ESS BizTools by developing a product which would assist accountants to identify grants that might be suitable for individual clients. So that's the background to why the product was developed. ESS BizTools, we've been going for 15 years, supplying material to accountants throughout Australia and New Zealand to assist accountants to become more of the business advisor or chief financial officer to small medium enterprise, to give you the opportunity to diversify away from compliance work a bit. And the computer programmer that's been involved is Tim Donovan from Real Advantage Solutions, who has taken all of our data on the various grants and how that all fits and who's eligible, and has created a computer-driven system. Now we're using cloud technology, and the system is available 24/7 for you to access details on your clients. So how it works is we require you to insert your client's name. If you don't want to put their name into a system that's going to be utilizing cloud technology, you can put a registration number in. Obviously you've then got to keep the details of the registration number. But what we want to know for each individual client is summarized on the screen there at present, because government grants rotate around knowing this key information. The corporate structure. There's no doubt that companies are the most popular entity for government grants from the government's point of view, but some other entities are eligible for some of the grants. Turnover levels come into play, both minimum and maximum, for many grants. Employee numbers also come into play, but primarily for state or territory government grants. Location is important in some of the grants, particularly Enterprise Connect, which has this concept of remote and very remote locations that can gain, businesses in those areas can gain admission with lower turnover levels. Expenditure can be important in one grant, and I'll talk about that when we get to it. Exports. There are grants for exporters from the federal government through Austrade, but some of the state governments and territory governments also have grants for exporters. Research and development, obviously it relates to the research and development tax rebates, but it also can be the link in our system to ask us to identify some other grants that we presume research and development would have had to have been undertaken to have a prototype or a product that's been finished that might be eligible for grants such as Commercialisation Australia. There is then a need to identify the type of business and the industry that the business operates in, and we're using the Australian and New Zealand standard industrial classifications to do that, because that's what the government agencies have used in determining the grants in the first place. So the system will then produce what we call a pending list, which is the possible list of grants. You will then be required to answer some additional questions on virtually every grant as we try to narrow down whether your client might be eligible. We're then going to produce a potentially eligible grants report, which you can give to your client and have a discussion with them, and then get them to commission you to proceed on a fee-for-service basis for the finalisation of the grant applications and coordination with the relative government departments. There is some assistance from what we call the Toolkit, which is ESS BizTools papers and other material that we've produced to give you, and if you wish, your client, a better idea of what's contained within a particular grant. You do have the ability to click on direct from our site to the applicable government department's website to gain the application form, and we'll show you how that's done. So we have some profiles which we won't go into at this stage, so we'll just end that show there, and we will I've now brought up the website of ESS BIZGrants. We have a very good testimonial which we're very happy with from David Smith, the Managing Director of Smith Inc., who I was referring to earlier. And one of our users, we've placed his testimonial on our site, Jason Kresge from Yulton Chartered Accountants in Bundaberg. When we get started, and once you're subscribed, if you're a subscriber, you then get access to this members area, which gives you full details of how the system operates, gives details of what the industry codes are as per the ANZIC codes, and talks about the type of reporting that the system will produce. What we're going to do, though, is go into client profiles. When you have a look at a client profile, we'll just show you a blank one to start with. It's asking for the client's name or the reference number, as I said before. You then need to select the entity type that the applicant complies with. So they're the various entities that a small, medium enterprise business might be able to gain admission to government grants. There's no doubt that companies are the most common business entity type. We've got questions there about exporting products, importing, number of employees, as I mentioned before, Australian business number. Each of these grants that's within ESS BIZGrants are grants suitable for small, medium enterprises. So they all need an ABN. If they haven't got an ABN, the system won't show any grants. The years that the business has been operating is very important. Enterprise Connect, arguably the largest grant provider to small business on a numeric number, has a requirement that the business must have been active and have lodged 3 annual business activity statements. Many other state and territory governments have similar conditions. Over the last year or so, we've had a few questions from subscribers or people interested in this product. What grants are there for startups? Unfortunately, there's not many. There used to be 10 years ago, but most state governments and the federal government have got out of that space. They're now looking for a business to have proved its credentials and to have been operating for a period of time. And as I just said, in Enterprise Connect's situation, 3 years. There are some opportunities though for startups, but they're very limited. They can be in things like the research and development, as long as the taxpayer is a company and more than $20,000 has been spent on eligible research and development in the 12 months. That business could be a startup. The other ones are under Commercialisation Australia, which requires the applicant to have developed a new product, process or service. The Skills and Knowledge Grant and the Experienced Executives, a business without any trading history could apply, but to have developed the product or the service, they've probably been in business for a year or so in any case. There's no others that I can readily think about. Most state government grants require a business to have some experience. The annual turnover, as I mentioned before, turnover is very important. In a number of grants there is minimum turnovers and maximum turnovers. Expenditure is a question we're asking there because within Enterprise Connect they have this strategy or approach that they talk about a minimum annual turnover or expenditure. So an applicant for Enterprise Connect could have a very little turnover or indeed no turnover, but if they have spent more than the nominated sum of money on research and development, on temporary plant facilities, on prototype construction, they could well be eligible for Enterprise Connect, and that's the reason we've got that question there. The businesses trying to secure these grants that we've listed in ESS BIZGrants need to be registered for GST. If you answer no to that question, you won't be offered any grants. The tax exempt, this product is for small, medium enterprises, so if the applicant is a not-for-profit or a charity, and obviously they're tax exempt, there are no grants going to be displayed for them if you answer yes. Research and development, I mentioned that before. We want to know that so we can have our system track their potential eligibility for not only research and development tax rebates but also Commercialisation Australia grants. And are there any concerns about the financial vulnerability of the business? That's a question that's asked in words to that effect by virtually every government grant these days. So what we're suggesting to people is you interpret that the way you think a government employee would interpret it. They're really only worried if there's a liquidator about to be appointed or a receiver about to be appointed. The fact that there might be a large amount of debtors outstanding and debtors days outstanding is a high figure such as 62 days is really not of a concern to the government. They're more worried is whether something has happened or about to happen that would affect the business's ability to enter into agreements, etc. Because if you answer yes to that question, the system will not display any grants, because if you answer yes to that question when you lodge the application with the government department, they won't process it in any case. They'll just say you're not eligible because there's concerns about the financial vulnerability of the business. Now, we can't go any further unless we actually put some information into the system. So what we will do is go back and I will find a client profile. So I've got all sorts of examples in here, but we're going to go down to one that I used yesterday in another webinar. I called it Eastern Steel Fabrication. It is partly completed, so you can get an idea of how all this works. So we entered the company name, which we called Eastern Steel Fabrication Proprietary Limited. We said it was a company, so we looked at all these others, said no, it's a company. They export, they import. They've got 18 employees. They have an ABN. They've been in business for 13 years. Turnover of 4.2 million. Expenditure of 3.9. They prepared GST. They're not tax exempt. They are involved in some research and development, and there's no concerns about their financial vulnerability. So we then inserted their address details, and I did this yesterday, and we said they were in Hawthorn, in recognition of Hawthorn winning the AFL Grand Final. We inserted the postcodes that told the system where this location was. The system repeats back the financial details. We then had to go in and find or identify the business and industry profile. As I said a little earlier, business and industry profiles are very important because that's what the government department has used in framing the wording on the grants. You can go on and have a look at the ANZIC classifications if you wish, and that might help you. But they're the business classifications according to the Bureau of Statistics, so you need to select which of those applies. In this case, I probably forgot to tell you at the beginning, this business we're doing with here, Eastern Steel Fabrications, we believe is a manufacturer, so we've already clicked on manufacturer, and that's why it's saying manufacturer there. Then we had to look at what type of industry related to this business. Under the Bureau of Statistics classifications, there are 17 main categories. They're on the screen there. You need to go through and select which one applies, and we've decided that in this case, these people are in the manufacturing industry. So once we've done that, you're able to click search, and the system will then take you to pending grants. Now, we've already processed a few grants in the system, so it's easier to show you in a webinar. But we're going to pick a couple of others so you can see how the system works. So we've got here, we can get on any of them by just clicking on you can get the grant details. Now you'll notice this particular one is an apprenticeship new worker certificate, but the industry needs to be listed in the National Skills Needs List. This is a list produced by the federal government. The current one was produced in August, but we can have a look at that because we've got that in our toolkit. But the reason it's come up in this situation now is that various trades that would fit under the definition of manufacturing industry are listed on the National Skills Needs list. So that's the reason it's been displayed for us to look at this stage. We'll keep on going through this one so you can get an understanding of how this works. These are the funding details for apprentices so that you could look at that and talk to your client about it. If you want more details, you can then go to the Grant Toolkit, and we click on here and we will get the ESS BizTools paper, which identifies how the apprenticeship scheme works in Australia. So you can look at that and say, okay, that's interesting. You could print that and give that to your client if you wished. But also we've got here the ability to read the National Skills Needs list. So let's have a look at that so you can see it. You might not have seen one of these before. So here's the list, and if we go through some of these trades, we'll see trades like fitters and turners and gas fitters, even glaziers, all of which could come under the definition of manufacturing, and for that reason they've been highlighted. See down here you've got metal machinists, metal fabricators. So that's the reason. So if you wanted to have a look at that, the data is there for you to do so. Now at this stage you say, okay, this client might be interested in this apprenticeship incentive for a new worker. So if we clicked on to additional criteria, in this case it's a fairly simple question. Some of these grants have 6 or 7 questions. This one's only got 1. Are you interested in engaging an apprentice? And they're in one of the industries listed in the skills and needs list. Now at this stage the status is pending confirmation, and the system ends here. There's nothing there at this stage, but we click on here, we see that the system's now told us we're potentially eligible, and if we wanted to we can apply now. So we click on there, that will take us to the Australian Apprenticeship Organisation's website, which in this case will give you a list of the 300 odd apprenticeship organisations around Australia that you can go and talk to, because that's the process on apprentices. So if we want to go back to results now, we'll go back to results. The number of pending grants has now changed to 40. If we want to have a look at potentially eligible, our apprentice, somehow or other our system's got a bit mixed up here. We had a couple here yesterday on apprentices, adult apprentices and apprentices with disability. Oh, there it is, sorry, I missed it. There's the one we just looked at, the apprenticeship incentive for new worker. So yesterday when I was also working this material, we had already processed some adult apprentices and apprentices with disabilities. This is so that this client can have a good look at this when you sit down and talk to him. And now today I've put into that list of potentially eligible grants this new worker apprenticeship incentives that we looked at. Yesterday we'd already identified some of these other programs. So if we just go back and have a look at this one, the Continuous Improvement Program for Manufacturing Centres. This was where a client has already been in the Enterprise Connect program, and they can come back and make a further application for some further consulting work to be undertaken. They can secure a further $20,000. The Grant Toolkit is there if you wanted to have some additional information. We've already gone through and answered the additional questions, and if we wanted to apply now, we could go straight to the Enterprise Connect website to do so. So we just might work through one of these other grants. The system at this stage is giving us a number of apprenticeship grants that this business would have been eligible for, but there are a range of other grants. Now, I'm not going to really go into the clean technology because I'm quite uncertain at this stage what the new government's going to do about some of these clean technology grants. At this stage they exist. This business, it was described as a manufacturer, but unfortunately manufacturing is a very wide terminology, so it's also showing clothing and household textiles, but you'd ignore that because you know that this client's not in that industry. If you wanted to get rid of it, what you could do is go to additional criteria, and it says, is the business an Australian-based entity in the manufacturing design industries for clothing? So if you answer no to that, what the system will say is that you're ineligible, because that's not the right answer to that question. So if you go back to results now, in the potentially ineligible, we've got this clothing and textile scheme. We go back to pending. We'll just pick out one other just to take you through. I'm just going through all these clean technology because I'm a bit concerned about how they're all operating. Now, depending on what your client's doing, each of these grants could have had some bearing. I'm going to bring this one up. The client may not, but just so you have an understanding, this is the early stage commercialization grant. It's for someone who's developed new product. The grants can be from $50,000 to $2 million on a 50% basis. So there's the grant. There's quite a number of companies listed on the website for Commercialisation Australia who have got grants between $1 and $2 million under this program. You can click on and get additional information. You can go and answer the additional criteria. So we might just do this. Is the company seeking support for the systematic work necessary for establishing processes, systems, etc.? We say yes. Is the early stage commercialisation estimated to cost a minimum of $100,000? That's because the minimum grant is $50,000. Are you able to supply an accountant's written opinion that the applicant meets the funding conditions and has the ability to fund the applicant's share of costs? So if you get any clients coming to ask you about these things, you know they're applying for one of these Commercialisation Australia grants, but perhaps you should be having a look at it. There might be some work you can do under this program. Has your company a group turnover under $50 million? The normal Commercialisation Australia maximum turnover is $10 million, but for this particular grant, it is $50 million. It needs to have the beneficial use of intellectual property. We say yes. You need to be able to answer yes to the following. Does the business need the funding? Has it got a commercial potential? Is there a market opportunity? Have they got the management capabilities, and is it in the national benefits? Can the business fund from its own resources at least 50%? That slows some people up. They need to really think that through. Does the company meet its obligations under the Workplace Gender Equality Act? So we say yes to all that. Yes is not necessarily the correct answer either. Sometimes you've got to answer no. The system's now said we're eligible. We could go back to results, and then under potentially eligible, we have got this series of grants. So what we might do now, because time's moving on, is we'll have a look at the report. So if you had done this work for your client, you could then prepare a report like we have done here, Eastern Steel Fabrication. This would be your name there, not ESS BizTools. It would be the name of your accountancy business. There's been 7 eligible grants found for Eastern Steel Fabrication. You've then got a short synopsis of what the grant's all about, and you've also got the details of the amount of the grant. Let's put that back. It's got details of the other grants. It's got a disclaimer on the bottom saying, whilst all care is taken, no guarantees are given, because the client has got to submit an application to a government agency. So that's the report that the system is able to produce. You would then sit down and have a discussion with your client and basically get their authority to proceed. Our recommendation, you would give them an engagement letter and you would start the process of assisting them to prepare the grant application. Also, don't forget that in some of these grants there is work that an accountancy firm can undertake, primarily an accountancy firm that's got some interest in business advisory services activities. Under Commercialisation Australia, work such as business plans, strategic plans, budgets and cash flow forecasts, human resources systems, reviewing their debtors, acting as a mentor to ensure that appropriate management activities and meetings have been put in place. There is a quick example of some of the grants that accountants have been involved in with Enterprise Connect, and there's also opportunities within Commercialisation Australia, especially skills and knowledge, in preparing of business plans, market report, training the company how to make investment presentations, etc. Now, a lot of that material on how to do that is contained in our other product, ESS BizTools.